The legislators who are joining us today. Assemblyman Mike Cusick. Assemblywoman Nicole Malliotakis. District Attorney Michael McMahon. Commissioner of Public Administrator, Richmond County, Edwina, Francis. Kim Marcel, representative for Senator Lanza. Jessica Spanton, representative for Senator Sabino. Musab Sadia, representative for Assemblyman Charles Paul. Brianna Nasty, representative for Councilman Joe Borelli. We also welcome Jackie Best, Regional Offices Operations Director, statewide, to speak on behalf of OPWDD.
Good morning, everybody. So on behalf of OPWDD Acting Commissioner Ted Kastner, who's unable to be here today with us, I want to thank you for this opportunity to join you this morning. Now, typically, I'm from Long Island, and I usually attend the Long Island Legislative Breakfast, and I've always been a little partial to Long Island. I always thought it was the best. But I have to tell you, I'm pretty impressed.
All right.
So, I would like to also thank all of the presenters that we will be hearing from today for sharing their insights and stories. It is through stakeholder feedback from you, the individuals, the families, and others that we can make our service system even better, always focusing on what is best in supporting those who we have the honor to serve. I want to share with you, in the brief amount of time I'm allowed to speak, some of what lies ahead this year as we work together to further our shared vision and commitment to helping people with developmental disabilities live richer lives, fully integrated in their communities. So in the 2019-2020 proposed budget, OPWDD continues to make significant strides in the transformation to a more responsive and flexible system of services and supports for the people that we serve. The proposed budget also includes nearly $3.7 billion in state spending on OPWDD supports and services, which represents an increase of just under 3% over the current year levels. In regards to our transition to managed care, on July 1st of last year, OPWDD launched Health Home Care Management, provided by 7 care coordination organizations, otherwise known as CCOs, and approximately 100,000 people successfully transitioned over to CCOs and are now getting their care management through those organizations. OPWDD continues to work with these CCOs in various ways to address the issues we've encountered along the way and to improve consistency and overall quality of care statewide. In the coming weeks and months, more information about this transition to managed care will be shared, and I encourage you to continue to keep your eyes on our website, as well as the Department of Health website. As we move ahead toward a more responsive and flexible service system, I look forward, as does the Commissioner and the other representatives from OPWDD, to working with you, the people that we support, the family members, providers, and our governmental partners. Thank you again for the invitation to speak at this wonderful event, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Good
morning, everyone. I'm Cris Marchionne, and I'm honored and privileged to serve as the chair of the Staten Island Developmental Disabilities Council. I'd like to take some time and thank the Advocacy Committee and the co-chairs, Barbara Devaney and Donna Long, for planning and coordinating the 2019 Community Breakfast. I'd also like to thank the students and members of the Hunger for Ops program for putting together the information package, which are the blue folders that each one of you should have received when you walked in. Thank you. I know it's probably painstaking work and it takes a lot of time and dedication. It's really appreciated. I'd also like to thank Angela Edwards, the Administrative Assistant of the Staten Island Developmental Disability Councils, for the ongoing day after day hard work that she's done. I'm not sure where she is, but thank you. And lastly, I'd like to thank each and every one of you. I'm sure it's been a long and exhaustive week, and it's Friday, the week is still not over. So you're either winding down or ramping up for the weekend, or maybe you're doing both. But thank you for taking some time out of your Friday and sharing breakfast with us. So this year, 2019, believe it or not, the council is celebrating 50 years. 50 years. I am so proud to be part of this council. I can't even tell you what it means to me. It's a big part of my life. I made some great friendships, some meaningful connections, some mentorships, and I'm hoping that I can walk in their shoes and be a mentor for those who follow behind me. So thank you to my colleagues and those who came before. Thank you. So 50 years of celebrating, advocating, emancipating, liberating, and day after day, non-stop social justice making for the freedom and rights of people with developmental disabilities. Congratulations to each and every one of you. And you know what? Staten Island is the best, and we never give up. We're always going to be knocking on your door. The past 50 years are really just a testimony of dedication, a testimony of building a community, building up a community. It's a testimony of hope, love, and support. And this morning you will hear the stories, very personal and intimate stories of the disabled experience. You're going to get a glimpse of what life is like through a different lens. You'll hear stories of triumph, of hope, of accomplishment, of achievement, but you're also going to hear about the struggles. And I just want to make it very clear that these struggles are a direct result of systemic barriers in our society. Barriers to education, barriers to housing, barriers, let's just see, about in our government, and sometimes the barriers come from our own family and friends. It's called systemic ableism. And, you know, we all need to be concerned about disability, every single one of us, every human being, because disability affects all of us. Just in the United States alone, there's over 60 million people living with a disability, and across the world, over 1 billion people living with a disability. So if you weren't born with a disability, you will, if you live long enough, acquire a disability. Therefore, we all need to focus on dismantling ableism, improving accessibility, improving access, and acceptance. Think about that, acceptance. I know I want to live in a world where I'm accepted for who I am. I think we all do. And we need to focus on improving quality of life for each and every one of us. In a few minutes, I'm going to be introducing Chris Trieber. He's our keynote speaker this morning, and he's going to be talking about the importance of early childhood education. He's also going to be talking about the systemic barriers and ableism surrounding early childhood education. He's going to be talking about discrimination. And then we're going to hear from Diane, Leah, and Mary. And these three brave women made a choice to be here today and share their very personal stories, their life journey, and give us a little insight into their disability experience. And I think it's important that not only that we listen to them, listen to their stories, but we remember their stories, and more importantly, share their stories. And then when you leave here today, and you go back home, or maybe you're going back to your office, take a little time. Sit back in a chair, take a deep breath, and let it out. and reflect on the stories that you heard this morning, and look down deep inside yourself and look at your actions and discover your own story, and then go tell it. Thank you. Okay, I'd like to introduce Christopher Trieber, the Associate Executive Director for Children's Services at the Interagency Council.
Good morning. Thank you, Chris. So first, I'd just like to thank the Staten Island Council for inviting me to speak again today, and also for recognizing the importance of preschool special education, the importance of the services that are provided by our 853 programs, and the importance of early intervention. Just to have some idea or background of who I am a social worker by profession. I've probably worked in this field for more than 30 years. I have worked in a preschool special education program for 5 years when I was with AHRC in New York City, and I was there for 17 more years, so a total of 22. I represented parents as an educational advocate, fighting on behalf of children to get services for their kids. For the last 7 years, I've been with the Interagency Council, and basically trying to help ensure that preschool special education and 853 programs continue to provide services to families who need them, to make sure that early intervention is available for families who need them. And the struggle that Chris talks about is clearly one of the things that I have been working on behalf of the families and children who depend on these services over the past 7 years. And it has been a fight to try to get those services, to maintain those services, and I'm going to basically try to lay out for you what kind of the current landscape looks like. And honestly, it's not really that good. But before I do that, I do want to acknowledge last year that Regent Christine Sia is here. She is an amazing advocate on behalf of children and students with developmental disabilities. And in fact, in June of last year, IAC recognized her and awarded her with the first Spirit of Advocacy Award on behalf of all of the work she's done for so many years on behalf of children. I go to the Regents meetings every month, and she's the one person at that table who always recognizes and talks about kids with disabilities. Other than all the others, she's always there. She's always fighting on behalf of the kids. So I do think we really should acknowledge that. So 1 year ago, you were kind enough to invite me to speak at the breakfast. And I'm kind of surprised that you had me back, because I know I impressed a lot of people last year. And I don't really think that I'm going to be able to make anybody too happy with what I have to say. But it needs to be said. Last year I told you that preschool programs were in a state of crisis, and that children with the highest levels of need in this state and those services were in jeopardy. Since I spoke to you 1 year ago, IAC has continued that effort. We fought on behalf of children and families. We created an advocacy campaign called Your Kids Are Our Kids. There's buttons on your table. We met with elected officials, representatives from the Board of Regents, Governor's Office, SED, urging them to increase funding, that there needed to be immediate action to address this deepening crisis. We spent 2 days right before the budget was settled last year, meeting with every representative from the Assembly and the Senate Education Committee, pleading with them to increase money so that the teacher crisis that we're experiencing in our schools could be at least minimally averted. We didn't get 1 penny. We had a town hall meeting in June. 400 parents and professionals came to that town hall meeting in an effort to get increases to our services. Our preschool programs, at the end of the day, after all of that work, after all of that advocacy, got a 2% increase in tuition. 2%. Okay, 2% does not cover the cost of increased services in a given year. 2% amounts to a cut. And so these programs have been cut year after year after year. I'm here to tell you that the situation has gotten worse. In Webster's dictionary, they define an emergency as urgent need for assistance or relief. I can tell you that our schools have now reached the state of emergency. And why do I believe that? First of all, Advocates for Children, which is an advocacy organization that's been working on behalf of children for many years in New York City, is reported consistently in a number of locations that they're getting significant numbers of phone calls from parents of children with disabilities, parents of children with IEPs who are desperate, looking for preschool special education seats, and they can't find them. That's the first time that's ever happened. On February 7th of this year, New York State Education Department posted a new regional need request for New York City. That regional need request is for almost 800 special education preschool seats. Almost half of them are for classes of children who need programs of 6s and 8s, class sizes 6s and 8s. Those are children who typically are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy, medically fragile kids who need these services. They're vital to them. In Staten Island alone, there's still a need for 88 preschool special education seats. That need has remained virtually the same in the last 3 times that they've posted regional need. Preschool special education programs can no longer, and 853 programs can no longer recruit and retain certified special education teachers. The turnover rates and the vacancy rates in our schools have skyrocketed, and I'm going to outline some of that for you. We can no longer recruit and retain teacher assistants. In the past 4 years alone across New York State, 61 preschool special education programs have closed, 31 of them in New York City. So if you wonder why there are children sitting at home who need preschool seats, that's why. Because programs have closed and no one is stepping up. No one can come and open new programs because the providers don't have certified teachers and they can't afford to do it when the state isn't providing them with enough funding to educate the kids that they're serving. Early intervention services are in jeopardy. For the first time, the state of New York has recognized that early intervention services are no longer available across the state. Occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech services are not available. They are failing to adequately implement those services, and in fact, the governor recognized it, and in his budget, he put a recommendation for a 5% increase for services in early intervention for the first time in, I don't know how many years, 20 years, 25 years, for OT, PT, and speech, but he failed to recognize the need for teacher instruction, which is 40% of all of those services, including ABA services to children. No increase was recommended for them. At the end of December 2018, the State Education Department announced that they were going to close all of the early child direction centers. The ECDCs have been a lifeline for families with young children for more than 40 years. They're the interwoven fabric of the existing support structure that families of young children depend on. They're the primary referral source for families of new diagnosed children, supporting parents through a very difficult time, providing reassurance and ensuring a linkage to critical services. I know that you're going to hear from another parent in a little while who benefited from those services, and the services that the Staten Island Early Child Direction Centers have provided for more than 40 years. So you hear all that, and then I have to ask myself why. How did we get here? Logically, I know. I can answer that question. 6 years of zero funding growth. How can programs survive? 4 years in the school-age programs with no increases at all. Even when the State Education Department themselves made recommendations to the Division of Budget and said preschool programs need a 4% increase because they're in financial jeopardy. They actually stated in a report 3 years ago that the lack of adequate funding would impact the quality and availability of preschool special education services. And even with all of that, the New York State Division of Budget cut the recommendations in half for the last 4 years. So every time the state ed says preschools need 4%, they got 2%. Who are the children who attend these programs? Every one of the children who attend one of these programs across New York State are public school children. Every single child is placed there because the New York City Department of Education or a local school district around New York State has determined, after evaluating the child, figuring out whether or not they have services available for those children, have determined they don't have a seat available. It's not like parents of these children have decided, yes, I want to send my child there. These are not schools that parents say, yes, I have a lot of money, I'm going to send my child there and I'm going to sue New York City for reimbursement. These are publicly funded programs. These are public school children. They're children who live in your neighborhood who would go to the local school if the seat was available to them. These are children who are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy. These are children who are medically fragile. These are children who need these services. There is no other appropriate educational setting for these children. The schools also meet the federal mandate of New York State to provide a free and appropriate public education to all these kids. New York State has that mandate. They pay federal dollars. They have to provide faith to these children. The programs help the state meet this mandate. However, the state has really not adequately funded these programs to meet this challenge. I want to ask you in this room, how many of you know a child who has received either preschool, special education services, or early intervention? How many of you believe that these services help the quality of that child's life? These services matter. Your theme, we matter, our children matter. These programs make a difference in the lives of children and families, and they reduce the need for more intensive educational services. In the governor's education budget this year, in the overview, there's a declaration. It says, as budgets are statements of values and priorities, it is clear that New York's highest priority is the education of its children. I'm going to basically tell you why I believe that there is no evidence that children with developmental disabilities who attend 4410 and 853 programs are a priority for New York State. Since 2012, state aid to school districts for education has increased by 42%. During the exact same time, state aid to our school-age programs for children 5 to 21 with the highest levels of need in the state have increased by only 22%. And during that same time, preschool special education programs have gotten an 8% increase. 42 to 8. Is that equity? I don't believe so. On your table, there's a slide that looks like this. It outlines for you. It's going to tell you exactly what I just told you. It's right there. Our schools have suffered for many years without any tuition increases at all, and only in the last few years have they gotten limited increases. Imagine the public outcry if funding of public schools were frozen for 6 years. If children were sitting at home because there was no available public school seat. Yet that's exactly what our schools are experiencing. The impact of the growth freeze and the limited tuition increases are threatening the fiscal viability of all of these programs. Based on CFR data from fiscal year 2015-16, preschool special education programs statewide lost more than $34 million. School-age programs lost equal amounts. Many of the programs that provide these services are nonprofit. They can't continue to operate with these kind of losses. So one of the requests we've been making is that 853 and 4410 programs receive minimum tuition increases that are comparable to increases provided by the state every year for school districts. The lack of adequate funding is having a significant impact on preschool and school-age providers' abilities to hire, recruit, and retain certified teachers. Our 4410 schools are facing a dire staffing crisis. In order to document the impact of that crisis, we surveyed our membership. IAC has about 45 preschool special ed providers and about another 35 or 40 school-age providers. So we asked them a few questions. We wanted to find out what the annual teacher turnover rate is in their schools. And we also wanted to find out how many vacant positions they have. And we asked them basically a very simple question. How many teachers should you have based on all the classes that you have? And how many teachers left? How many teacher assistants left your program within 1 year? We determined that the turnover rate for our 4410 programs was 26% for all of the teachers. That means that almost 1 out of every 4 teachers left the school in a given year. Some turnover rates in some of our schools were above 50%. For our school-age programs, the turnover rate was even higher. It was 31%. Even teacher assistants now are leaving at record rates, more than 23 and 26%. What was even more alarming, though, is when we got the vacancy rates back. The vacancy rates mean that you have a certified special education teacher who should be teaching that classroom who's not there. That's what a vacancy rate means. And so as concerned as we were about the turnover rates, the vacancy rates were even more alarming. Because what we found is that the vacancy rates have increased by almost 65% in our schools in the last 2 years. We had vacancy rates of 16 and 17%. Now they're on average 28% for our school age and our preschool teachers. That means that almost 1 out of every 4 teacher positions is vacant right now. And our schools have attempted to recruit. They've gone to meet, they've gone to colleges, they've gone to fairs. They have advertised consistently. If you pick up any education advertisement, any newspaper advertisement, look on Indeed, look on Disabilities Scoop or anything else, there's so many advertisements for teacher positions in our schools. We're just not getting them. It's important also to recognize that behind those numbers are children. Children who don't have teachers. Children who have teachers who come and go. You know, it's extremely difficult for any young child when their teacher leaves in a given year. But think about it for children with developmental disabilities. Think about it for a child with autism spectrum disorder who has a teacher there one day and leaves the next. It's heartbreaking. It's detrimental to their well-being. And increasing vacancy rates just basically mean that more and more kids are not being taught by certified teachers. It's also important to remember that all of these programs are required by Part 200 of New York State regulations to have a certified teacher in their classroom. And only a certified teacher can implement an IEP, an individualized education plan. Only a certified teacher can basically provide a free and appropriate public education to children. The lack of funding is making that almost impossible. Our 4410 and 853 programs are unable to pay our teachers anywhere near what a local school district can pay. The gap has grown to the point that it's virtually impossible for our schools to basically maintain and hire teachers. On your chart, you'll see, on your page, you'll see, on your table, you'll see something that says a tale of two teachers. This is what we're dealing with. Public school teachers across New York State, on average, can pay their teachers $36,000 more than our schools. That's average. Around the state, that disparity is much larger in certain places. The benefits package that public school teachers are offered is worth 63.89% of their annual salary. Our school's average benefit is 23%. So if you look at the tale of two teachers, on the one side you see I'm a certified teacher. I teach in a 4410 or 853 program. I have 5 years experience. On average, I can pay $51,000 a year. I work 12 months a year and pay for my medical insurance, and I have no pension. On the other side, I work at a public school around the state. I'm a certified special education teacher with the same experience. I get paid on average $87,000 a year. I work 10 months a year. And I will be given lifetime medical insurance and a full pension. If you were a teacher, where do you want to work? I testified at a budget hearing about 2 weeks ago, and one of the assembly members asked me, you know, is this from a teacher shortage? Like, why do we still have teachers in our schools? And I said to her, the only reason we have teachers in our schools, and I'll be very honest, is because the New York City public school does not need them. Local school districts do not need them. Because if they did, they can call up a teacher right now and say, I can offer you $36,000 more, and most of the teachers in these schools will leave. That's the kind of crisis we're facing. Many of our programs are currently operating classrooms utilizing administrators and supervising teachers. All of them have certifications, and so they've got to have certified people in the room. So they're putting everybody in the room that they can, and that's diminishing the quality of the programs. It's also affecting the people. You know, those people went into the profession, they wanted to be supported, they wanted to be mentors to teachers. They went back to school, they got advanced degrees, they're in those positions, and now they're teaching classrooms because there's no one there. It puts an incredible strain on the schools. Education directors have told us the majority of teaching staff have left schools, they've gone to work for local school districts. Teaching staff in our schools are deeply caring, committed professionals. They work every single day to ensure that children in our schools receive a free and appropriate public education. They don't leave because they want to. They leave because they have to, because they get a better economic life for their families. The consequences of these inadequate funding, the years, have left these schools in untenable positions. They're left with two choices. Either they allow uncertified non-teachers to teach these classrooms, or they start to close classrooms in schools across the state. And if they do, where are the children going to go? So we call upon New York State to act now to ensure that every single student in a 4410 or 853 program has a certified teacher providing special education to them. And we're asking for $15 million for special education schools to narrow this compensation gap. By no means it will change the gap. It will be a step in the direction to say to our teachers that they matter, that they're valued, and that we're trying to give them some increased money so that they remain and teach. Our education directors struggle every day with challenging questions. How much longer do they continue to operate classrooms without certified special education teachers? Do they accept children for a summer program or a school next year when they know they don't have enough certified teachers anymore? Should they close their classrooms because they do not have enough certified special education teachers and teacher assistants? The ultimate question that each of our education providers must soon confront is how much longer can they sustain these programs, given the fiscal losses and given their inability to recruit and retain certified teachers. IAC has a large number of preschool special ed and E53 providers who are debating that question right now. What would New York City do if one of our large preschool providers gave them a 90-day notice and said, you know what, we serve 700 children right now in preschool special education, but as of July 1st, we're going to have to close our doors? What would New York City do? New York City has a vacancy, has a regional leave request out right now for almost 800 seats. That's the entire one of our schools. Also, when I said 61 preschool special education programs closed, the largest program that's closed thus far has 120 kids. We're talking about the potential for a massive immediate crisis. And every one of the children in those schools have a legal right to an education under federal law. New York City will be sued instantly by advocates if one of those programs close because they have no place to put those kids. In conclusion, I would just like to ask why? Again, why in the state budget of $126 billion can they not find $15 million to address the teacher shortage? I'd like to know why children who attend these schools, these 853 and 4410 schools, are not given the same financial resources as every other child who attends a public school in the state. And it's important to also remember that all of those parents who have children in those schools pay the exact same taxes as everybody else. They should be entitled to the same services. If New York State believes that education of its children is its highest priority, it has a moral responsibility to act. The choices that are made regarding funding for early childhood special education and school-age services in this year's budget will have a profound impact on children who attend preschool and 853 programs and the families who depend on those critical services. New York State must stand by its pledge that each and every child, regardless of ability, receive a quality education. We can expect no less from this state. We can expect no less from our government, and we have a right to those services for all of our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And now for a parent's perspective, the importance of the Early Childhood Direction Centers, I'd like to introduce Diane Cavagnaro-Irvine.
Good morning, everybody. You just heard from Chris Trieber that on June 30th of this year, the New York State Education Department will abruptly terminate its contract with the statewide network of Early Childhood Direction Centers. These centers have provided guidance and support to families seeking services for their young children with a suspected or diagnosed delay in development. There are 14 ECDCs across New York State. Each is funded by the New York State Education Department and sponsored by a local agency. In our borough, Staten Island University Hospital has sponsored the grant for 30 years. I am a mother of 4. 2 of my children are 17 years old, and 2 are 20. Yes, I have 2 sets of twins. So as a mother of young adults, you may be wondering why I stand before you today to discuss the closure of early childhood direction centers that serve children from birth to 5 years of age. One of the most commonly asked questions to youth is, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was a question posed to me in 5th grade when I was asked to complete an assignment on formal letter writing. Some of you may have heard my story before when I spoke at my very first Staten Island Developmental Disabilities Council Legislative breakfast on March 15th in 2002. The story is worth retelling because it truly captures the essence of what I wish to share with you today. My 5th grade teacher asked that we compose a letter to ourselves, and in the body of the letter, we were to include our aspirations. We put it in a sealed envelope with a stamp, and we handed it in. That was in 1982. We forgot about it. Fast forward to June of 1989, I was preparing to graduate high school, and a letter comes in the mail addressed to me. Handwriting looked familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. And when I opened the envelope, it was a letter to me from my younger self. Great teacher, right? And I know you're all curious, so I brought the letter, which is really turning yellow and getting old, but I'll share a little bit of it with you. My name is Diane Lynn Cavanaugh, and I am 11 years old. My birthday is March 5th, and I am in the 5th grade, and I go to St. Anne's School. My teacher's name is Mrs. Conadell. She's a really nice teacher. When I get out of grammar school, I want to go to St. Joseph Hill High School. I'll do my best in high school so I can get into a good college. So far, I'm good in school. I have no idea what college I'll go to. My goal for life is to become a successful doctor. I hope to become rich. And I want to have 3 kids, a girl and twin boys. I also want to have a big house, and I want a maid too. Well, yeah. So my reason today for sharing this with you is simple. In life, we all plan at some point or another. I was 11 years old, and I knew what high school I wanted to attend, and I actually did graduate from St. Joseph Hill. And I knew I wanted to go to college. A couple of years after that, I graduated from college, and I'm a physician assistant, so it's close to a doctor. I also knew I always wanted to be a mother, and I even wished for twins, so that's proof that you should always be very careful what you wish for. Anyway, we all set goals for ourselves, and in most cases we follow a conscious or subconscious plan to achieve the goals throughout our life. Can I ask all the mothers in the room, it doesn't matter how old your child is, to raise your hand? Okay, so there's a lot of you, and I know some of you, but I do not know all of you. And I can say with 100% certainty that while pregnant, none of us ever said, well, you know what, it really doesn't matter if it's a boy or a girl. I will be happy if my baby is just developmentally disabled. And it sounds absurd and it sounds ridiculous, but that's the truth. The expectation of every parent is that their child will be born healthy. So when your child is diagnosed at birth or 2 or 4 years of age with any disability, there's been no preparation for the life that lies ahead. The direction of our lives take a drastic turn, and there's a frantic search that starts for information. What does diagnosis mean for my child? What does it mean for my family? What does it mean for me as the caregiver? Where do we go, and who do I ask for help or for support, or just for a little sanity to know that I'm not alone? After Billy and Rachel were both diagnosed with autism at 2 years of age, my initial contact was with the ECDC of Staten Island. I will never forget the conversation. I had been scared, confused, quite honestly devastated, and I was lost in a world that I knew nothing about. The ECDC reassured me that they would support me in every way possible and that I was not alone. Words cannot capture the feeling of comfort and peace their words brought to me in that moment. The guidance and support of the ECDC set the infrastructure on which our new life was to be built. It was through their recommendation that I found support groups that allowed me to network and gain strength from other parents facing the same challenges. ECDC led me through the maze of early intervention and the entire CPSC process that follows, ensuring that my children received the services that they deserved. ECDC also facilitated the process of applying for Medicaid waiver, a daunting task for anyone who's done it. And they aided me in the transition to Eden 2, which is the program my children still attend today. They were my lifeline for the next few years, always ready with answers, options, or just supportive words. A few years passed, and one of my younger sons had started to show delays. The presentation was different from my younger son, from their older siblings. But in our house, you were autistic until proven otherwise. The ECDC was my first call. Over the years, I have developed a relationship with the staff, some of whom have their own children with disabilities. I have come to them on and off over the last 18 years with questions and sometimes just for support. The difference they have made in my life and the lives of my children truly cannot be measured, and I am so very grateful. The ECDC recognizes that the time immediately following diagnosis is crucial. There is a strong evidence base supporting early intervention, and the earlier it is started, the better the outcomes. There is truly no time to waste in the early stages of development. Early identification and referral to services is key to successful outcomes. However, navigating the multitude of services available online in New York can be overwhelming. Actually, overwhelming is an understatement. Which programs will best provide for the specific needs of your child? Which programs and treatments are valid, and which ones will take advantage of our vulnerability as parents of newly diagnosed children? Who will you go to and who can you trust? Facebook, social media, where everybody is either perfectly content or completely disgruntled and nowhere in between. The staff of the ECDC takes away that guessing game. Their advice is consistently reliable and trustworthy. Access to online services alone can never replace the meaningful conversations with knowledgeable, patient, and compassionate staff with over 30 years' experience. The personal connection with the ECDC becomes even more important when you consider families that are experiencing hardship or challenges prior to their child's diagnosis. As a neonatal PA, I have witnessed firsthand the fear in a mother's eyes when she does not have a stable home to go to, and we are preparing to discharge her medically fragile infant. How can she possibly care for her baby when she herself has no financial or personal stability? I have had to assemble a small army to help with my kids, but what happens with families that have nobody to recruit? Language barriers also amplify the challenges for parents they amplify the challenges that people face. So, if it was hard for me to absorb the magnitude of information and navigate the system, even as an experienced neonatal PA, imagine how vital it is for families with pre-existing challenges to make that personal connection with ECDC staff as early as possible. All services by the ECDC are free of charge and can be offered to families in the language of their choice. Parents are educated on their rights and responsibilities, and they learn how to advocate through mentors and trainings. They are linked with community resources and services that will assist in making the journey successful. The ECDC provides all of these services and then some. On Staten Island alone, the ECDC opens 600 new cases per year. They refer over 250 infants and toddlers to EI programs, provide 2,500 follow-up contacts with parents per year. They send quarterly newsletters to over 3,000 members of our community and parents, and they provide trainings for parents on an array of topics and collaborate with community organizations on referrals, linking these families to local supports and services. The New York State Education Department Office of Special Education is currently establishing a network of support for individuals with disabilities from birth through post-secondary school years. This restructured education partnership includes early childhood, family, and community engagement centers referred to as FACE centers. The FACE centers will be expected to engage in joint planning, provide technical assistance, and professional development to a variety of stakeholders as determined through regional planning. We understand that restructure may be necessary to achieve the desired outcomes of the State Education Department. We support their endeavor to provide technical assistance and professional development that will promote meaningful family involvement within the educational system. However, there remains concern about the families with children aged birth to 5, because these children have not yet entered into this educational system. The identification and referral of these infants and toddlers is not mentioned in the scope of the work outlined in the request proposal that's going to be implemented. Expectations of this RFP do not align with the current parent experience during the initial processes today here on Staten Island. The individualization, personal communication, and direct support will not be possible with the proposed RFP structure. Professional development, technical assistance, and online services are the focus, rather than direct service with families. When questioned, State Ed's response was that a regional planning process will be utilized to strategically meet the needs of stakeholders in each area of the state. We are concerned. It is March, and this is rolling out in 4 months, and there really has been no clarification on the plan for July 1st. Staten Island families, agencies, and providers have come to trust and rely on the services rendered by our current ECDC. The personal planning process they develop is unique to each child served, and they provide direct, ongoing, supportive measures for their families. What is the plan for those families on July 1st? Is it logical to think that when one plan ends, the other will begin seamlessly? Parents and professionals voiced their concerns regarding this process. The response was that the Early Childhood FACE Center is an integral member of the OSE Educational Partnership, and it is essential for the success of this partnership that all members begin the process together. The fact remains that the ECDC is being closed a year before the contract is due to end in June of 2020. We are not asking that they delay the opening of the Early Childhood Faith Center. However, allowing the ECDC to remain open for the remainder of the contract would facilitate ease of transition, not only for the families affected during this time, but also for the community that serves them. This would ensure a stable, consistent, and valuable resource for our most vulnerable population. Unfortunately, there was no community stakeholder input into this decision. The proposal seems to radically change the ways that parents, caregivers, medical professionals, and early childhood providers have been assisted for 40 years by the ECDC network, and the transitional plan remains vague. Please let the Commissioner and Chancellor know that it is prudent to keep the Early Childhood Direction Centers in place through the end of their current 5-year contract date of June 30th, 2020. The contact information for the Commissioner and Chancellor was handed to you at registration. I ask that you share your personal experiences and concerns with both. Please keep in mind that Billy and Rachel's journey started with direction from the ECDC. Without this initial contact, they probably would not be where they are today. I received a text from Laura Kennedy, the director of the ECDC, this morning to thank me for my support. She is hoping that together we can, in her words, preserve the hug over the phone that our families in need. Thank you for your support, and never give up hope that together we can make a difference.
Okay, and now for a prospective residential services, making a house a home. We have Leah Reedus, direct support professional, and Mary Knight from community resource.
Good morning, everyone. I am Leah Reedus, and I am a direct support professional. Standing next to me is Mary Knight, and she is one of the ladies who makes Sprague Avenue a home. I was born into a family that gave me a purpose in life. Since I grew up around my aunt and cousin who are both born with a developmental disability, I witnessed firsthand how a good support system can have such a positive impact on someone's entire life. Seeing how much of a difference a strong support system like my aunt and cousin enjoyed in our family could make, it is what inspired me to do the same for others who might not be as fortunate. Community Resources Sprague Avenue Residence was opened in 2007, was the second NDU house on Staten Island. But as the famous saying goes, a house is not a home. And the purpose of a community residence is to give people with a developmental disability a home in their community when it is no longer possible for them to live with their family. The direct care staff becomes their family, and since I have had the privilege of working as a direct care staff at this home for the past 10 years, the 6 ladies who make their home there have become a part of my family. They have taught me so much about myself in the years I have known them, and they continue to inspire me every day to meet life and all its challenges just as they do. I am truly lucky to work with such amazing individuals. The responsibilities of a DSP are many, and they are not easy. DSPs work long, demanding hours and have hectic work schedules. It takes patience, dedication, compassion, and a sense of responsibility to be a direct support professional. The people living in a certified 24/7 residence require care around the clock and help with routine daily tasks. And as a direct care staff, that's why I am here. Helping them get ready for the day, I assist the individuals with everything from getting up in the morning, reminding them to brush their teeth, properly showering, picking out weather-appropriate clothing, being ready for their program, preparing nutritious meals, administering and explaining the purpose of their medications. The duties of a DSP are not only physical, but we are also there to offer emotional and mental support as well. If I have a bad day, I have my family to turn to for support and advice. When the individuals have a bad day, I need to talk about it, or when they simply need advice, it is us, the direct care staff, that they look at as their family to give them the comfort and encouragement to help them get through it. Unfortunately, some do not have the support of their own family. The staff is the only family they know, and they put all of their trust in us. Some individuals do not have family members to go home to, or with whom to celebrate special occasions or holidays. It is our job to make sure they have a happy birthday, or that they can celebrate the holidays just like you and I. When they enjoy social activities and outings with their housemates, such as going out to eat, to movies, or having their hair and nails done. Everything that everyone else takes for granted. For many of the individuals that make their home in a community residence operated by a voluntary provider, the direct staff is all they have. As a DSP, I am very proud to say that I have been able to help these strong and courageous women overcome some of the hardest obstacles that anyone can face. Personally, I was there to help one of the individuals through a very difficult time of finding out she had cancer, to taking her to all her necessary appointments, discuss the life-saving options that were available to overcome her illness. As a direct care staff, I was with her every step of the way, and I did everything I could to help her recover physically, emotionally, and mentally during this hard time. I am happy to let you all know that today she has made a full recovery. Being a direct care staff is a difficult but very rewarding job. I believe that every day I'm making a difference for the better in the lives of the people I care for. I spend every day with these amazing women, and knowing that I'm helping someone every day is what makes me love this field and love what I do. And I couldn't imagine doing anything else. However, when I decide to have a family of my own, I know that I will not be able to support them on the salary of a direct care staff. Therefore, I am currently in school to further my career in this field. Right now, many direct care staff do have families and need to work several jobs with several different agencies to make ends meet. They are pulled in a million directions, they are tired, and they cannot be expected to do the best all the time. Yet, the best is exactly what the people who live in a community residence deserve. On top of that, if they were not fortunate enough to have a calling to work with people with disabilities, and are doing this simply to earn a living, they will quickly burn out and look for another minimum wage job. Unfortunately, that deprives the people of the continued care that gives a sense of security and makes a family. Residential development is needed so that everyone who has a home now and in the future will have one. And the salary of direct support professionals should be raised, as promised by Governor Cuomo, so that dedicated, compassionate people will be able to support themselves and their own families, and be a mother, father, sister, or brother to someone who needs a family. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane, Leah, and Mary for sharing your personal stories. And now I'd like to introduce Donald Long, the co-chair of the Advocacy Committee.
Good morning again. I will be very brief, but hopefully the message is taken. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge co-chair of the Advocacy Committee, Barbara Devaney, for once again writing a compelling and comprehensive position paper. For year after year, she just does such a great job of it. Sorry, Barbara, but I had to say that. People need to know. You just listened to some very compelling presentations. We must take this information and knowledge presented today and turn that into action. Unfortunately, we are still in very challenging times. It is our responsibility to advocate to ensure that the efforts and energies we participated in since the closing of Willowbrook are not undone. We want to make sure that the quality of life attained by individuals with a developmental disability is secure. In order to do that, we all need to participate. We need you to advocate. Be mindful, there is strength in numbers. We are 400 strong in this room today. And each year, that's about the average people we have attending this breakfast. That's pretty impressive. And last year we had this rain and windstorm. Today we had snow, and you're still here. Kudos to you. We're 400 strong in this room today, and each of us have family members, friends, neighbors, etc., who can all become part of our advocacy efforts. Collectively, we need to be one voice. Year after year, presenters speak at this breakfast and highlight the priorities impacting individuals with developmental disabilities and their families. Many times the priorities are repeated over and over and over because there is no resolution. We urge you to get involved. Be vocal. If you are asked to sign a letter, make a phone call to your legislator, do so. Please don't wait thinking somebody else will do that. Remember, strength in numbers. Sorry. Speak to your legislators and express your concerns. If a rally is planned, join in. Take action. In your folders, there are some handouts that I would just like to highlight and ways for you to start your advocacy efforts. There's a letter in here, there's a yellow page in here regarding ECDC. At the bottom it says, please email or write or call the Commissioner and the Chancellor to let them know why it's important to keep ECDC. Don't leave it in your folder. Please do so. There's also a rally coming up. We just heard a beautiful presentation from a direct care staff professional and all that they do on behalf of our children. There's a rally coming up March 25th. Ironically, it's in the Capitol, but ironically it's in the War Room, which I always find very funny. I don't get that, but anyway. And that will take place on March 25th. We are in the process of planning that. We'd like to get buses to go. It's statewide. We'd like to have our voices heard and really rally on behalf of the direct care staff who do so much for our families. The information will be getting out shortly, but you can contact the council office, which the phone number as well as email address is also in your folder in this blue and white pamphlet. I'm going to just show my age a little bit, but years ago there was a great song, and the lyric was, I am strong, I am invincible. And we know the rest, but I'm going to leave that part out. And I don't want to sing it, but I sing it a little clear. But anyway, the definition of invincible is when someone is too powerful to be defeated or overcome. Collectively, we are invincible. And I would like that the momentum here today, when you leave the breakfast, not for it to go away. Keep the momentum going. Keep the words of the presenters that you heard in your head, and let's take action with that. I ask you to just repeat 4 phrases after me, but I really would like to hear it with a lot of passion. There is strength in numbers.
There is strength in numbers.
We are one voice.
We are one voice.
I promise to advocate.
I promise to advocate.
Now this one I want to be really loud. We matter too.
We matter too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Now I'd like to ask Assemblymember Michael Cusick to come up.
Thank you, Chris. You know, I want to thank the council for having this event every year. It is a great resource for myself and for my fellow legislators to have this event at the start of what is now the budget season, from March 1st to April 1st. So to the council, I want to thank you. I was lucky enough to meet with the executive board, I think it was a week ago, right, Chris, at SIDDC, and I got a briefing there for a couple of hours, and you are a great advocacy group, and that is what makes this island so great, is that we have a great resource as legislators, and I want to thank you for that. I want to thank all the agencies that are here today. I don't know if all of you get thanked enough for the work that you do for the community of Staten Island. And as was mentioned by one of the speakers before, all of us know somebody or are affected by disability. I think it was Chris who said it. And what you do and what your organizations do, you actually take care of our families, of us, of our friends and neighbors. And that's really what makes Staten Island the great place that we live in. And I am so proud when I go to Albany because there's no place else in the state of New York like Staten Island. And it's an organization like this that makes Staten Island great. So I want to thank all the agencies for what you do. And within that, I'd like to hear a louder applause for all the direct care workers that are here today. Our delegation is with you, and we will push hard this year to make sure that you are paid for what you are worth and what you do for the people that you care for. It is about time. I have another thank you. I want to thank Regent Sia. Regent Sia is here today. She's also a member of the council, has been a long-time member of the council. I think I can announce this because I'm the one who puts her name forward every year, but she has served as Staten Island's regent since 2009. And I am proud to say that the Assembly and the Senate will be re-upping Christine Sia as the regent from this district next week. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say that part of when Staten Island became its own judicial district, one of the results of that was we got our own regent because it goes by judicial district. And it was up to me at the time, because I was the senior member of the delegation, to put forward a name to the Speaker of the Assembly and to the Majority Leader of the Senate, because it's the legislature that appoints the regent. And many names came across my desk, but Christine Sia's name stood out. Because again, you've heard me many times, and I see Mike McMahon here today too. Mike and I are products of Betty Conley. So when her dedication to developmental disabilities. So when we saw the resume, and then we wanted to make sure that special education, developmental disabilities was heard at the Board of Regents, and Christine has done that since 2009, and I am happy to say she will be doing it for another 5 years. Whether she likes it or not. But again, today, you energize myself and my colleagues, because now we go into the budget cycle. Next week, we start with our resolution in the Assembly. We start with our resolution in the Senate. From there, then there's a fight, then becomes negotiations with the governor. And on April 1st, hopefully, we'll have an on-time budget. I have to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm more optimistic this year than I have been in the past. There is a different dynamic in, without getting into politics, there is a different dynamic in Albany right now. So when you see and hear today, that is the proposal by the governor. But every year, you've heard me say that the State Assembly majority has been pushing for more funding, has always been on the side of people with developmental disabilities. I believe now, going forward, we're going to have a strong partner going forward in these negotiations in the Senate. And so I am optimistic. I am optimistic, and maybe it's just my Irish nature, right, McMahon? But it's with you that we can get this done. It's with every single person in this room. I know you work very hard every day, and I know every year we ask you for a little more. But in order for us to push and make sure we get that funding for 853 and 4410 schools, I need just a little more to get to that finish line. In order to get the funding for our direct care workers, those letters that Donna Long talks about, those emails to legislators, the constant campaigning for a month is what we need to get this done. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to tell you from the Staten Island delegation, we know that you matter. And we're going to prove that this session once again as a delegation from Staten Island with your help, because today this energizes us. And we use you as an example. Every dollar we vote on in the budget is a person, is a life. Every single dollar. So when we shift it from one place to another, it has a face. And that we will always remember. And your stories will come with us to Albany. And I thank you for that. I thank you for your advocacy. And to our direct care workers, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Now I'd like to ask Assembly Member Nicole Malliotakis to come up.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you once again this year. And when Donna was talking about the rally taking place in the War Room, I thought she meant the Assembly Chamber, because oftentimes that's where we go to battle. We debate our priorities for the year. It's where we debate legislation. But certainly, as Mike Cusick said, on this issue, it is one where the entire delegation from Staten Island really agrees. It is one in which we are working together to try to push this agenda as much as possible. We were very disappointed to see that the governor did not include the additional funding to support the salaries of our direct care workers. I think that was an awful thing. I think sometimes our governor plays politics and tries to utilize the most vulnerable, well, maybe not sometimes, maybe oftentimes, but sometimes the most vulnerable communities are the ones that he uses as bargaining chips, and I think that's really a wrong approach, and it puts a lot of anxiety and fear in people. I mean, I can't tell you the number of groups that have come up to us in Albany this year very concerned, whether it's senior citizens who are concerned about losing spousal refusal that helps them care for their sick spouse without having to go bankrupt, whether it's our various workers from, mostly the direct care workers from various sectors that are concerned as well, losing teachers at our special education institutions. These are the most vulnerable in our society that they're caring for, and we've got to make sure that funding is there. So certainly I know, and it has huge bipartisan support in the Assembly, to make sure that that direct care funding is there, and that our direct care workers are getting paid what the governor promised, right? This was a promise that was already made, so to not put the money there is really disingenuous. Now, while we don't, the Republicans in the Assembly don't control the process, we have made it also part of our top 10 priorities for the budget, and we had a press conference yesterday announcing those. In terms of the state reimbursement rates, I actually think that this is such a critical issue, and I really want to work with all of you to make noise about this. And I think, like you have done with the direct care campaign, which is successful and will be successful, you need to do the same thing. You need to do the same thing when it comes to the reimbursement rates. We need you to come up to Albany and be very vocal about it. And I, in particular, and I was sitting there talking to Chris about this, it's interesting that the mayor says we're going to have pre-K for all, but obviously we don't have pre-K for all. And that's something that needs to change. what's interesting is in this year's city budget also, they want to add another 3,100 seats. And so I'm certainly going to be writing and asking how many of those seats are going to be dedicated for our special education students. And I think what's also very interesting is in Bay Ridge, which I represent, I assume there's a similar problem, although I haven't heard directly from those community-based organizations. In Bay Ridge, I'm hearing that there's an oversaturation of preschool seats in many community-based programs, not special education, but in many community-based programs that provide pre-K, because the city keeps adding pre-K programs and building schools and spending millions of dollars to build schools to provide pre-K when there aren't enough kids to fill those seats. So what I'm going to suggest is, why are we not taking those resources and that money and putting it so to make sure that our special education seats for preschool are fulfilled? And that, I think, it should be a priority for us going forward. Because when you look at whether it's speech therapy, occupational therapy, special education, early intervention is so important. And we know, right, that when we invest early on, at the preschool level, at early intervention levels, that we save money in the long run, right? So that's important for fiscal conservatives like me and taxpayers who want to save money. But we're also doing the right thing for the people. So this is a win-win situation. I think we need to really work as a group to do that. So after, we're working on this the Be Fair to Direct Care, but we've got to do something about, we're going to come up with a good name, Donna, for this campaign for the reimbursement for our schools, okay? And so that should be our next initiative going forward, and count me in as a partner in that. And I've just been added this year to the Assembly Education Committee, so I will be vocal for it. Thank you.
I'd like to ask District Attorney Michael McMahon to come up.
Thank you, Chris, and good morning, everyone. It's no easy task to follow our great legislators, Mike Cusick and Nicole Malliotakis, and Mike is certainly right. He is an Irish optimist. I asked him, how's the weather this morning? He said, oh, it's just a little soft. And he promises that the parade on Sunday, it's going to be 85 degrees and sunny. But I say good morning to you all, and I'm sure you're wondering, I find as district attorney, when I walk into a room, people sometimes, they look down, they don't want to see me, and they wonder, what the heck is the district attorney doing here? Is somebody in trouble? But nobody's in trouble. And you may be wondering, well, why is the district attorney here? Shouldn't he be fighting crime right now? And I'm happy to report, as I stand here, that we have going on in St. George 3 trials, 2 for homicide and 1 for A1 drug and gun case. That's the first time in the history of Staten Island that 3 A1 felony cases are being tried simultaneously, so my team is working hard. And as you also know, on the side of prevention and the terrible opioid crisis that's facing Staten Island, we continue to address that from an enlightened approach, trying to go after the drug dealers, but at the same time helping those who suffer from addiction illness. But that's not why I'm here, and I am not a legislator like our great legislators, but I just want you to know that it's not only our legislators who are in elective office as well, but I, as district attorney, support the advocacy that's been going on by the council for the last 50 years. The only thing I will say, I commend you, I love you. So many of you I've known for 40 years, and as Mike said, we go back to working with Assemblywoman Connolly, whose spirit continues to motivate our legislators. But I'll also say to you, it's been too damn long, and we've been at this, you guys and we have been at this for too long, and it's time for the people in Albany and everywhere else to give parity in education, and for those who provide direct services across the board, that is something that should be accomplished. But as everyone has said to you this morning, we're not there yet. We will get there someday, but it's because of you and your advocacy that we will get there. So I thank you on behalf of the people of Staten Island for the great work that you work with. think it's not just the right thing to do, it's also personal. In my nuclear family, the issue, the disability that we deal with every day is not developmental, but it's mental health. And so I know from a personal perspective what it's like to have to get co-pays and insurance and dealing with services and getting diagnoses and interventions and the proper education and getting all those things. And I know how frustrating and maddening it can be and how it becomes sort of a second job in life. But it's a labor of love. And I know, and I look around and I just want you to know that I continue to advocate with you and to be a resource for you. And I just want you to know as well that in our office we do what we can to keep those who have suffered from any disability safe, as we strive to keep all Staten Islanders safe. We have established a hate crime task force, and one of those seats at the task force goes to Richie Salinardi, who represents you and advocates for those who suffer from disability. And the idea is simply this: if someone victimizes someone else with criminal acts, by identifying them for any reason, whether it's race, religion, gender, or because of a perceived disability, then that is an enhanced charge, and we can prosecute those people. We do not plead down those charges. And since I was here last year talking to you about it, we've successfully prosecuted 2 cases on Staten Island where it was a hate crime against someone with disabilities. So I want you to know we will continue to do that. Introduce, you all know Andrew Crawford, who's right there, who worked for Mike and now works with us, so he knows the issues that are talked about here. He is in our office. If you have any situation where someone is being put upon, victimized because of, for any reason, and whether you think it's criminal or not, please reach out to us, because we will continue to do what we can to advocate for your children, for your loved ones, for your families, as you continue your great work advocating for mine. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you. I see that the tallest person in the room is here, I believe. Assembly Member Charles Fall.
Come on, hurry up.
Am I really the tallest person in the room? Well, good morning, everybody. I want to first thank Donna and all the providers for putting this event together and all the work that you do for our community. You know, when thinking about developmental disabilities, I understand this firsthand. I had a younger brother who had Down syndrome who passed away, and you know, seeing everything that he went through and my mom went through. It was very tough, you know. So when I hear that there are cuts toward SIDDC funding and our providers aren't getting paid the fair share they should be getting paid, it's personal for me, and I find it offensive. And I echo it. I echo everything Assemblymember Cusick said, you know, because we have, I think, a strong team right here in the Staten Island delegation that will advocate for this community. But at the same time, I'm really happy to see that we have strong advocates within the community that continue to make their voices heard, especially to us and to the governor's office. So you have my commitment and the entire delegation's commitment that we will do everything we can to support this community. Thank you.
Okay, and Public Advocate Edwina would like to say a few words.
I do want Jemani Williams to know I'm not trying to be the public advocate. But I am the public administrator of Richmond County. And good morning to you all. Good morning. I want to hear that again. Good morning to you all. Good morning. Okay, that's better. So as the DA was saying, you know, people are probably wondering what on earth is he doing up here. You're probably doing the same for me. Why is the public administrator up here? She manages the estates of persons who die without wills and without heirs to appoint as administrators. So there are many things that we do in this capacity, and actually one of the things that our office does is serve as the trustee of estates of minors, but also persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And we have several of those cases right now. It's primarily with the estate, with the money, but we are unique perhaps in public administrators in New York State that we are also the guardian of a person with an intellectual and developmental disabilities. Sweet Eileen, she is absolutely wonderful. I also come here as someone who represented Councilwoman Debbie Rose at this event for many years. I was on the board of On Your Mark, and I know that John Bellotti isn't here this morning, but some of his staff are, and John really helped teach me what the issues are and the issues that your programs are dealing with. So I just want to give you all a big hand for the tremendous work that you do. I want to give a special shout out to Community Resources who are doing such a fabulous job with my guardianee, Eileen. She is just a wonderful woman. She is warm, she is caring, and they are doing such a phenomenal job with her. I'm so happy to work with them and helping to make sure that all of her needs are met. One of the things that I'll be talking about with groups, as time goes on and I grow into my role, is just the importance of attending to guardianships. A lot of people don't. It can be complex. It can be daunting. It can be, as one of my table mates and I were discussing, also emotionally fraught. And so you may not realize just how critically important it is to address that issue and to start addressing it at an early age with your children. So I thank you for inviting me to attend this morning. I'm an advocate. I come from an advocate's background. It's hard for me not to be an advocate, and that's not really my role right now. But I'm a Staten Island resident and a citizen, and in that respect, I will always be an advocate. So you can bet that I will be reaching out to my very wide network of organizations and talking about, in particular, the letters that we discussed that should be sent out now, because the budget is going to be done soon, under Governor Cuomo. The budget has pretty much been done on time by April 1st or soon thereafter every year. So there's not a lot of time. So I thank you for allowing me to speak, and I wish everyone a good day.
Okay, now it's time for questions. And Barbara Devaney is going to be walking around with the mic, so raise your hands. It'll work.
My name is I'm a South African. I'm in New York State. I'm a board member. My reason for being here today is because next week I'm moving into my own apartment. I'm moving out of a group home into my own apartment. I don't know what I would do without my staff, my CCO, the people in ECCS for helping me, but they are the wonderful people. They took their time out to help me move in and closer to my fiance. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I would be at today.
My comments were ever since these legislators have spoken about the Be Fair to Direct Care. What you guys say is 100% true. In fact, all the direct support staff and service providers, stand up. Stand up. Stand up, all of you. You are the reason why we do what we do. And I'm eternally grateful for every single one of you service providers and direct support staff. Thank you.
Anybody?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joanne Rizzo. This is my son Joseph. I've been coming here since I moved to Staten Island, and it's 20 years. In 20 years, I've gotten to meet the same people and met the same workers and the parents, and it's wonderful. But it's sad at the same time because we're all here for the same purpose, that their lives depend on the dollars and cents. And I remember when I came out here that Elizabeth Connolly said something to all his parents, that you have a voice, speak for your child. They deserve the quality of life. They deserve to have the right choices, just like our children. Unfortunately, and I say this in no disrespect to politics, but how would I say a nice way? Mario Cuomo gave us a promise that our children would have a quality of life. He told us we would never have to worry. We would never be concerned that they would have their place in society. I've been known to this oppositional threat. That's being taken away. We're losing programs, we're losing services, we're losing money. And we're all sitting here on a Friday morning. Some of us have to take off from work. Some of us have to stay home, take care of our children, but there's no programs. There's no services that are giving them the quality of choice that they used to have. That was the one thing that I love, that my son was able to go to the programs, have a module, and decide on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, he had a choice. He could decide what he wanted to do and where he wanted to do it. And guess what? When he moved into a group home, that choice was taken away. Why? Why? Why did he have to lose that choice? Because the state feels that the agency can provide it in the home? I don't think so. And I'll give you an example. If my son and his friend Danny want to go to a program, and it's at the exact same time, but at different locations, you can guarantee one of them is losing out, unless that person is individually independent. So I have to say to the legislators that I know you've been fighting, because I've been here for 20 years, seeing the same people that are dedicated to giving us what we need for our children. You've got to fight harder. You've got to work harder. You have to let them know. They matter. Our lives matter. I don't want to go in the grave worrying that my son and every child that's here, we don't know what's going to happen to them. That's sad. Because if it's their child, they would think a lot differently. So please fight for them.
Anybody else have a question or comment? Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming today, and we'll see you next